let's try solving this then. We're going to do absolute value, and just like I said before, if I say the absolute value of x is 5, two scenarios are really going on. Negative 5 is 5, and positive 5 is 5. So what's inside here actually has two values, kind of, right? Two things make it true. If we try a problem, for example, 2, and I'm going to ask you to solve it. 2, absolute value of 6x plus 8 equals 32. Just like everything else we've done kind of lately, it's got steps that will help you in the beginning especially. If you're the step kind of person, let's write them out. Right? A couple of steps that will make it work. Step 1, okay? You want to be sure that you get the absolute value alone. That's step 1. In other words, if you'll kind of take a look at this, here's my absolute value, my 6x, but it's not by itself. It's got this 2 and this 8 in the way. You're not allowed to solve it until on the left side is only the absolute value. That's all. So step 2, make two separate equations. Okay? That's what I did over on the board. Remember I put 1 equal to 18 and 1 equal to negative 18? I realized we don't write negative 18, but it's what gave us negative 18 that we're looking for. Number 3, solve both equations. That's the other thing that we did. And lastly, you really should check it. And I'm not saying it just because I want to be that Crayola DeVille of math teachers, right? Not to be evil. I want you to check it because actually sometimes the answer is no solution. And you should want to be careful. Okay, we'll have one like that in a minute. All right, so let's get started. Step 1, get absolute value all alone. The 2 and the 8 are in the way. Let's move them over. So subtract the 8 first. So 2 times absolute value of 6x gives us 24. My next step would be divide everything by 2, which gives us the absolute value of 6x equals 12. And this is where I was trying to explain a really easy problem. What's the two answers, guys? 2 and what? 2. Okay, so now I know you know the answer. I'm going to show you how to get it, because sometimes we aren't going to be able to find the answer in our head. Okay? What we did in our heads is we said to ourselves, all right, 6 times what number is 12? All right, 2. Good. And then we said to ourselves, 6 times what number is negative 12? Negative 2. We just did it all in our head. Well, when the math gets complicated, you can't. So what I did is let's write out what we've got in our head. We knew 6 times some number gave us 12. And we knew 6 times some number gave us negative 12. Right? Because we just wrote it to ourselves. All right, I know it's going to give us negative 12, and we're going to write 12. And then we mathematically found it, and the two answers are 2 and negative 2. So these are your two answers. The next step said to check. So if you'll just really quickly check your answer, and I'll show you how. It takes 2 seconds. So here's your little check section. You plug both of them in. So I had a 2, 6 times 2 plus 8 should be 32. I'm not going to do the math until I get them all plugged in. There's my 2 checks. I'll show you. I'll give you a second to write it. At least write down one check so you understand where the checking is coming from. You got them? Now mathematically think about it. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24 plus 8 is 32. Very good. Now go the other one. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12, but it says absolute value. So we're going to say positive 12 times 2 is 24 plus 8 is 32. Very good. Right? So those are your two answers. Let's try another one. Step 1 says be sure that your absolute value is all alone. Is it all alone? Yes. Okay, those of you that are kind of shutting down because you're like, oh, this is so easy. Just give me some time because they're not always this easy. Let me at least get to 3 and 4. Now, the next step is to separate them out, right? Because I know in my head the answer is 4, negative 4, correct? Where am I getting that from? I'm getting that because I know negative 9x gives me 36. Right, which makes 4 work. And negative 9 times a number gives me negative 36, which is where the positive 4 comes in. So x is negative 4, and x is positive 4. Either one works. And I realize I'm still doing easy ones, but they change in just a second. So to come over from my check, I know the absolute value of negative 9 times negative 4. And then I'm going to plug in positive 4. Just to be sure they both give me 36. Yes and yes. This gives me positive 36, which works, and this gives me a negative 36, which works. So the next one is harder. The next one you can't just glance at and know the two answers. Okay? Here's number 3. If you follow your steps, what's the first rule?
5
5 by 3. Which gives us, right, and that's what I was trying to explain to you. It's harder now to just glance at it and say, what gives me 7, what gives me negative 7. Do you see what I'm talking about? So in other words, there's a value for W that when I plug it in here, this is going to give me 7. And so I'm good. There's also, though, a value that's going to give me negative 7, right, which will work too. Because when I get negative 7 in here, then I'll write 7. But that's harder. So what you do is now split it into 2 equations like we've been doing. So I know 2W minus 1 is 7, or 2W minus 1 is negative 7. And solve for the 2 values, because sometimes they're not easy to do in your head. Add 1 to both sides, so 2W is 8, and this W is 4. So 4 works. I can plug 4 in, and it will give me 21. Now let's find the other value that might work. Add 1 to both sides, so 2W equals negative 6, and W equals negative 3. That's the other value that would work. Then you can come over and you can check them, right? Here's your check. 3 times 2, 4 minus 1. 3 times 2, negative 3 minus 1. 8 minus 1 is 7, so that gives you 21. And then this is negative 7, right, which is positive 7 times 2 is 21. So you're good both ways. Because this value is negative 7, but it wants the absolute value of it. The absolute value of negative 7 is positive, so you get 21 as well. All right, now here's 4. 4 is the twister. you see wrong with 4? Yes, excellent. What's the problem with 4? Again, you didn't see it yet. Yeah. What does this have to be? The answer has to be what? Positive, right? And what's over there? Negative. So no matter, when I did the math, if I got 1 as an answer, I would need to write 1. If I got -1 as an answer, what would I still need to write? 1. Would the absolute value ever equal a negative? No. Okay, it doesn't work. But what ends up happening is, you know, sometimes we just kind of get going with them and we forget about little things. That's the reason we have our check mode. Because let's say I forgot to notice. The answer right now, if you notice this early, no solution, you're done. You don't have to prove it. But if you forget, okay, like I do even sometimes, I just keep going. If I say to myself, all right, 2x minus 3 should be 1, or 2x minus 3 should be -1. Let's say I'm just not paying attention. All right, really quickly, let's solve them and look what happens. I get 2 here, and 1 here, right? So if I'm a good student and I go over and I check my work, watch what happens. I'm going to plug 2 in. I'm going to plug my 1 in. Okay, let's check the first one. What's 4 minus 3? 1. What's the absolute value of 1? 1, not -1. Now plug in 1. 2 minus 3 is -1. What's the absolute value of -1? It's 1, not -1. You see it? So that's why the answer to this is no solution. And you can write yourself a note just right now, really big, okay? Absolute value can equal a negative. And that was the problem. But on a side note, okay, so there's one cloud. Let's make a rainy day. Here's another cloud. Watch real quick. Since we're talking about this, and here's our star problem for today, I want to show you one more little issue. Does everybody see it? You cannot automatically say this is no solution. Can anybody tell me why? Yes, it's an absolute value. Yes, it equals negative. How come I can't just say no solution right away? Good. I haven't completed step 1, have I? Move the 3 over. Good job. Move your 3. And now the absolute value of x is 2. You see the difference? This is not no solution. Okay? Don't write, here's another note. Don't write no solution until you have the absolute value by itself. Does that make sense? We have 2 more. We're almost done. What's my first step? Does that say 5 times or 5 minus? I know, right? It's tricky, huh? It's not touching. It doesn't say -5 times that. It's 5 minus it, right? So subtract 5 from this side. That's a positive 5. So now then you end up with this. And you want to divide it in by -1. So you're here now. Absolute value on one side, and on the other. split it into your two equations now. Multiply both sides by 2 over 1. So x equals 4. Same on this side. X equals -4. You can check if you like. You should. To make sure that you both work. And that you didn't make any mistakes. Last problem. Okay, what's my first step? You start it? This fraction, this is messy. Okay, nothing pretty about this one. You ready? Divide everything by 6, and you end up with, this is one of those, we're going to go for a ride here because it's so messy. When you divide both of these by 2, because you want to simplify it, you end up with 19 over 3. Agreed? Okay, now, this step just depends on what you want to do. I was not allowed to distribute this way because you have to take care of what's inside first. Now you can clean up just what's in the radical. I'm sorry, what's in the absolute value. So here you're at 6x minus 21 equals 19 thirds. And as you know, 2 values might make it true. Sometimes it's just 1, it just depends. But in this case, 6x minus 21 is 19 thirds. Or 6x minus 21 is negative 19 thirds. And because it's so much fraction work, let's split the class, okay? So why don't we have these 2 rows do this problem. These 2 rows right here do this problem. And these 3 rows do this. They're almost the same problem. So let's just get practice. Okay, ready, go. These do this one. I'm going to work it as you go. So go, give me an answer. Come on. I'll split the work with you, but you got to actually do at least one. what did the right side do? What did you guys over here? What I didn't do. So 41 over 9 is 1. What's this side? Is it 20? Do I get 22 over 9? Okay. So there's your other answer. That one was a really long one. Do you understand it though? Okay. Alright, now then go ahead and start your assignment. I think there's like 10 problems.